You shouldn't have laughed.
When I stepped through those courtroom doors, my ex-wife Rachel actually laughed out loud. Her new boyfriend Marcus, a former police officer, leaned over and said, "He's absolutely nothing, just loud enough for everyone around them to hear clearly." They had fabricated photographs, prepared false witness statements, and hidden $45,000 of our money in a fraudulent business entity. But then Judge Catherine Mills looked up and recognized me. Her face went completely white. Her hand froze halfway to the gavel, and she said something that made the entire courtroom go silent. That's when Rachel and Marcus realized they'd made a catastrophic error. I'm Daniel Morrison, 43 years old, and I spent the past 18 years building Morrison Industrial Solutions, while my wife secretly built an alternate life with a man who used to carry a badge. I should have noticed when Rachel started attending those neighborhood watch meetings every week. Should have questioned why she stopped asking about my workday. But hindsight is just another word for regret, and I was fluent in that language right up until the moment I walked into that courtroom. The door felt unusually heavy. Maybe it was the weight of what I knew was coming, or maybe just the humidity that September morning in Cleveland. Either way, I pushed through holding my briefcase in one hand, my daughter Lily's favorite blue scrunchie wrapped around my wrist like a good luck charm. That's when I heard Rachel's laugh. Not the genuine one from our wedding video that I'd watched too many times, but this new artificial version she'd perfected over the past year. Sharp, calculated, designed to wound. She sat 4 rows back with Marcus Webb beside her, the ex-cop who'd somehow convinced her that a pension and a confident smile were worth abandoning 2 children and a nearly 2-decade marriage. Marcus leaned close enough that his cologne probably merged with her perfume in some nauseating combination. His voice carried perfectly across the quiet room. He's absolutely nothing. 3 words. That's all it took. Rachel laughed again, louder this time, and multiple heads turned. Her sister Beth smirked from the row behind them. Marcus's buddy from the department nodded like they'd just delivered the punchline to a joke they'd been building toward for months. I kept walking forward, one deliberate step after another, exactly how they taught us in basic training 23 years ago. Don't react to provocation. Don't engage with hostility. Just advance with clear purpose. My attorney, Patricia Harmon, sat at our table looking every bit of her 68 years, but sharper than most lawyers half her age. She glanced up at me with steady eyes and gave the slightest acknowledging nod. Then everything shifted. Judge Catherine Mills entered from her chambers, organizing papers and half-focused on the day's docket, when she looked up and saw me standing there. The color literally drained from her face like someone had opened a valve. Her hand stopped midway to the gavel. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. "Is that actually him?" she said, barely above a whisper. But the courtroom acoustics amplified it like she'd shouted. The entire room froze. Rachel's laugh died instantly in her throat. Marcus's smirk faltered and collapsed. Even the court reporter stopped typing, fingers hovering over keys like she'd forgotten what came next. Judge Mills stared directly at me for 3 full seconds that felt like 3 hours. Then she looked down at a sealed file on her bench, touched it once with her fingertips, and took a deliberate breath. Patricia leaned slightly toward me without looking away from the judge. "That," she whispered quietly, "is exactly what we wanted to happen." I sat down, set my briefcase on the floor carefully, and folded my hands on the table. Rachel was whispering urgently to Marcus now, her face tight with obvious confusion. He shrugged, but all his earlier confidence had evaporated like morning dew. The judge cleared her throat deliberately. "Let's begin." The divorce papers had arrived on a Tuesday. I remember specifically because Tuesdays were always my extended days at the manufacturing facility, and I'd gotten home around 9:30 to find the envelope wedged in our screen door like a knife between ribs. Rachel had left early that morning without mentioning where she was going. Come to think of it, she'd been doing that frequently. I sat at the kitchen table, the one we'd purchased at an estate sale 14 years ago, and read through 26 pages of legal dissolution. Rachel Morrison versus Daniel Morrison. That little word versus did something permanent to me. We were supposed to be partners through everything. Now we were legal opponents. She'd already removed half her clothes. I hadn't noticed until that exact moment, standing in our bedroom staring at the empty hangers like they were evidence of something I'd been too blind to see happening. The bathroom counter was cleaner than usual. Her expensive perfume was completely gone. The framed photo of us from our honeymoon in the Smoky Mountains had been turned face down on the dresser. I moved out 2 weeks later into a duplex on the west side of Cleveland, the kind of place where the landlord still accepts personal checks and doesn't ask too many intrusive questions. One bedroom, one bathroom, a kitchen with appliances from the late 90s. The sink faucet dripped constantly. I kept meaning to fix it, but never got around to it. Some nights I'd lie awake listening to that steady drip and wonder if this was what the rest of my life would sound like. Solitary, repetitive, slow erosion of everything good. Owen, my 13-year-old son, came over that first weekend. He walked through the place like he was touring a crime scene, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched defensively. Lily, my 9-year-old daughter, asked where her bedroom was. I told her she'd take the bedroom and I'd sleep on the couch. She cried anyway. "Mom said you wanted space from us," Owen said without looking at me. He stood by the window watching cars pass on the street below. "That's not exactly how it happened," I said carefully. "You have to be extremely careful with children during divorce proceedings. Every word becomes potential ammunition later. She also said you and her just grew apart naturally," he continued. He turned to face me then. 13 years old, and already he had that look. The one that says he knows there's more to the story, but isn't sure he wants to hear it. I wanted desperately to tell him the truth, that his mother had been seeing Marcus Webb for at least 6 months before filing, that I'd found deleted text messages and suspicious emails, credit card charges at restaurants I'd never been to. But you don't do that to your children. Not yet. Maybe not ever. "Sometimes things get complicated, buddy," I said instead. "But you and Lily, you're my priority. Always have been, always will be." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. That bothered me more than the divorce papers, more than the empty apartment, more than Rachel's attorney's smug voicemail about custody arrangements. My son didn't believe me anymore. That's when I started keeping detailed records. Every conversation, every missed scheduled pickup, every time Rachel changed the visitation schedule without proper notice. I bought a small notebook with a black cover and elastic band, and I wrote everything down. Dates, times, what was said, who was present. Patricia Harmon would later tell me that notebook saved everything. But that first night in the duplex, sitting on a couch that smelled like someone else's previous life, I just thought I was slowly going insane. Turned out I was the only sane person left in this situation. 3 months into the separation, I started recognizing clear patterns. Rachel would cancel my scheduled weekends with the children at the absolute last minute, always with some excuse. Lily had a birthday party to attend. Owen had a school project due. Our dog was sick. We didn't have a dog. I wrote down every single cancellation, every excuse, every time Marcus's pickup truck was parked in my former driveway during what should have been my custody time. I took photographs from down the street. Timestamps, license plates, everything documented. I felt like a detective investigating my own life. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Sophia Martinez, our children's nanny for the past 2 years, called me on a Sunday evening. Her voice was tight, noticeably nervous. "Mr. Morrison, I need to talk to you about something important," she said. Sophia was from El Salvador, 31 years old, studying to become a paralegal at Cleveland State University. Intelligent woman, too intelligent to miss what was happening in that house. We met at a coffee shop on Euclid Avenue. She brought a small digital recording device, the kind you can purchase at any electronics store. "I recorded some conversations," she said, sliding it across the table. "Mrs. Morrison doesn't know Ohio's one-party consent." I checked the laws carefully. I stared at the device like it might detonate. "What's on it?" "Her and Marcus planning things. Bad things, Mr. Morrison." Sophia's hand shook slightly. "They talk about you like you're nothing, like you don't even exist. And they're planning to claim you're mentally unstable, that you threatened Mrs. Morrison." My blood went ice cold. I never threatened anyone in my life. "I know. That's exactly why I'm telling you." She pushed the recorder closer. "There are 6 recordings total, different days. She asked me to lie under oath, to sign a written statement saying you drank booze around the children. I told her absolutely not. She fired me 4 days ago." I looked at this woman who'd cared for my children with genuine love, who'd just lost her job because she refused to destroy me, and something fundamental shifted inside. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what kind of man I wanted to be, the kind who rolls over and accepts defeat, or the kind who stands up and fights back. "Thank you," I said. "I'll make absolutely sure this matters." "There's something else," Sophia said quietly. "Marcus has a temper problem. I saw him grab Owen's arm once, hard, left visible bruises. Owen said he fell playing basketball, but I don't think he fell at all. Every muscle in my body went rigid. When did this happen? 3 weeks ago. I took a photo on my phone. She showed me. Clear image of finger marks on my son's bicep, distinctive bruising pattern. I copied everything immediately. The recordings, the photograph, every detail she could remember. Then I called Patricia Harmon. "We need to meet," I said. "Tonight, if possible." Patricia lived in Shaker Heights, one of those beautiful old brick houses that's been standing since before automobiles were common. She answered the door wearing a cardigan and reading glasses, took one look at my face and said, "Come inside. I'll make coffee." I showed her everything. She listened to the recordings 3 separate times, made notes in that precise handwriting attorneys seem born with, studied the photo of Owen's arm until I thought she might burn a hole through the screen with her eyes. "This changes absolutely everything," she said finally. "But we have to be strategic, methodical. They think they're winning already. Let them continue thinking that for now." She smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was tactical. "We build the case quietly, document everything meticulously, and we file a sealed motion. The judge sees it all before the hearing, before they even know what hit them." Patricia spent the next 7 weeks turning my life inside out. Every bank statement, every email, every receipt analyzed. She had connections, the kind of professional network you build over 45 years of practicing law in the same city. "Your wife's been systematically moving money," Patricia said during one of our meetings. We sat in her office, surrounded by file boxes that seemed to multiply with each visit. Small amounts to avoid triggering automatic alerts, 600 here, 900 there, all going to an LLC registered to Marcus Webb. For what purpose? "That's what we're going to discover." She handed me a printout. Allied Defense Consulting filed 5 months before Rachel requested the divorce. Marcus is the sole owner. The address is a UPS store in Lakewood. Shell company? Very likely, and if they're transferring marital assets through it without disclosure, that's textbook fraud. Patricia leaned back in her chair. "How much total are we talking about?" $45,000 so far. $32,000 from the joint account before she closed it. Then another $13,000 from her personal account that you thought was just for household expenses. Patricia's expression remained neutral. She'd seen worse. But for me, this felt like getting punched repeatedly in the stomach, betrayal wrapped in financial fraud. I spent the next month doing exactly what Patricia instructed. I sold a vintage motorcycle I'd been restoring, didn't need it anyway and couldn't afford the storage. I transferred my partial ownership shares in the manufacturing plant to my business partner, kept enough involvement to stay active, but reduced my personal liability exposure. Rachel thought I was making myself smaller, easier to defeat. I was actually making myself harder to hit effectively. Every Tuesday and every other weekend, I showed up for the children, always precisely on time, always fully prepared. I packed Lily's favorite snacks, those peanut butter crackers she'd eat by the entire package if allowed. I attended Owen's soccer games, even the away games that meant driving 3 hours each way. Rachel would show up late with Marcus, sitting in the stands like they owned the place. Owen started talking to me more, not about significant things initially, just small stuff, school, friends, a video game he was playing. But one night as I was dropping him back at the house, he said something that made me stop completely. "Marcus isn't a good guy, Dad." I turned to look at him directly. "What do you mean specifically?" "Just trust me on this. He's not." Owen got out of the car, then leaned back in through the window. "Mom doesn't see it, but I do." I wanted to ask more, but he was already walking toward the house. I sat there in the driveway watching him go and made a concrete decision. Whatever it required, however long it took, I was getting my children out of that situation permanently. Patricia filed the sealed motion 2 weeks before the scheduled court date. Judge Mills received it directly, along with all our evidence. The recordings, the bank transfers, the LLC documentation, the photo of Owen's bruise, everything compiled meticulously. We didn't inform Rachel's attorney. We didn't have to. "Now we wait," Patricia said, "and we let them walk into court thinking they've already won." "What if this doesn't work?" She looked at me over her reading glasses. "Daniel, I've been doing this since before you were born. Trust me, they're about to discover what happens when you underestimate a man who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." Rachel's lawyer, a guy named Kenneth Barnes, strutted into the courtroom like he was about to win an Academy Award. Young, mid-30s, the kind of attorney who practices facial expressions in mirrors. He had a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and a suit that screamed, "I bill $450 an hour." He started with photographs, Images of me looking exhausted, unshaven, distracted. One from when the plant had massive layoffs, and I worked 75-hour weeks keeping my team employed. Another from Lily's birthday party when Rachel had changed the date without telling me, so I showed up a day late. Without context, I looked like a ghost haunting my own life. "Your Honor," Barnes said, his voice dripping with rehearsed sympathy, "what we observe here is a clear pattern of parental disengagement. A father who's present in theory but absent in meaningful practice." Rachel dabbed at her eyes with a tissue on cue. Marcus sat beside her in the gallery, arms crossed, nodding along like a judge at a talent show. Her sister Beth whispered something to the woman beside her. They both looked at me with either pity or contempt, hard to distinguish the difference sometimes. Then came the videos. Carefully edited clips of Lily throwing tantrums and Owen looking frustrated. Rachel had stitched together the absolute worst moments, added Marcus's voice as narration. "This is what happens after they spend weekends with their father," he said in the video, his tone suggesting I was poisoning them with something more sinister than love. Barnes played it twice for dramatic effect. "The children return emotionally dysregulated," he continued. "Mrs. Morrison has had to enroll them in counseling to address the anxiety caused by Mr. Morrison's unstable living situation and unpredictable behavior." I felt Patricia shift beside me, not nervous at all, just ready like a boxer hearing the opening bell. Judge Mills watched without any readable expression. She'd already seen the sealed file that morning. I knew because Patricia had confirmed it with the clerk. Mills had spent 45 minutes reviewing our evidence before this performance even started. Barnes kept talking endlessly. "Furthermore, Your Honor, Mr. Morrison has shown a pattern of resistance to modern cooperative parenting. He refuses to communicate through the court-approved application, insists on phone calls at inappropriate hours, and has repeatedly questioned decisions made in the best interest of the children." That last part was almost funny. I'd questioned why Marcus was making medical decisions about my children. Apparently that was inappropriate behavior. Rachel took the witness stand. She wore a gray blazer that screamed, "Responsible mother," even though I'd never seen her wear it anywhere except court-related meetings. Her testimony was smooth, clearly practiced multiple times. She talked about how I'd become withdrawn emotionally, how I'd stopped engaging with the family, how she tried everything possible to save the marriage before giving up. "I just want what's genuinely best for Owen and Lily," she said, her voice breaking perfectly on their names. "They need stability. They need a home where they feel safe." "And do they feel safe with Mr. Morrison?" Barnes asked on cue. "I think they love him," Rachel said carefully. "But love isn't always sufficient. They need structure, consistency, things Daniel has struggled to provide." Marcus leaned forward in his seat, giving her an encouraging nod, like they'd rehearsed this scene 100 times. Patricia still hadn't moved significantly. She just sat there, pen in hand, making occasional notes. When Barnes finished his presentation with a dramatic flourish about protecting innocent children from parental instability, she simply wrote one word in the margin of her legal pad. I saw it from where I sat. "Showtime." Barnes had just finished his closing remarks when Judge Mills leaned forward slightly. Not much, just enough to change the temperature in the entire room. "Mr. Webb," she said, her voice calm but edged with something sharp, "can you clarify your involvement in Allied Defense Consulting?" Marcus blinked once, twice. "I'm sorry, Your Honor?" "The LLC registered 5 months ago, the one that's received approximately $45,000 from Mrs. Morrison's accounts." Mills tapped the sealed file on her bench. "You're listed as the managing member." The color drained from Marcus's face like someone had pulled a plug. Rachel's head whipped toward him violently. 45,000? What is she talking about?" Barnes stood quickly. "Your Honor, we weren't aware these financial matters would be under review today. We'd like to request a recess to examine the documentation." "Request denied," Mills said without hesitation. "The opposing counsel filed their materials within the legal window. You had equal opportunity to prepare." Patricia stood up. She didn't rush, didn't perform theatrically, just stood. She lifted a thin folder from her briefcase and walked to the bench like she was delivering morning coffee. "Your Honor, we've documented a series of transfers from Mrs. Morrison's personal and joint accounts to Mr. Webb's company over a 7-month period. Each transaction coincides with dates when Mr. Webb and Mrs. Morrison claimed to be engaged in legitimate business consulting." Judge Mills opened the folder. Her expression didn't change, but her jaw tightened slightly. She flipped through 4 pages, then looked up at Marcus. Mr. Webb, these are invoices for services rendered. Child development planning, household management consultation, financial restructuring. Is that accurate? Marcus's mouth opened, closed. It was legitimate consulting work. Legitimate consulting with no written contract. Patricia's voice remained steady. No business license for these services. No professional certifications in any of these fields. Silence. The kind that echoes painfully. Rachel grabbed Marcus's arm roughly. You told me it was completely clean. You said it was just transfers between partners. It was, Marcus hissed back, too loud. You signed everything. You knew exactly what you were doing. Barnes tried to intervene. Your Honor, I object to this characterization of legitimate business transactions between consenting adults. Mill's eyes never left Marcus. Consenting adults can still commit fraud, Counselor, especially when those transactions occur during divorce proceedings and aren't disclosed to the court. She turned to her clerk. Schedule a forensic audit. I want complete bank records from both Mrs. Morrison and Mr. Webb, all communications related to this LLC, and notify the Financial Crimes Unit. This may require further investigation. The room erupted in whispers. Rachel's face went from confused to pale to something approaching pure panic. Beth stopped whispering entirely. Marcus looked like he was calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Patricia returned to our table and sat down. She didn't smile, didn't gloat, just leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Watch them unravel completely." Barnes was flipping frantically through his files like maybe there was a magic document that could save this disaster. There wasn't. Rachel grabbed her phone, started texting furiously. Marcus sat perfectly still, staring at the judge like he'd just realized he'd walked into the completely wrong courtroom. Judge Mills wasn't finished. Mrs. Morrison, these transfers began 5 months before you filed for divorce. At the same time, you were claiming financial hardship and requesting increased spousal support. Would you like to explain that discrepancy? Rachel stood shakily. I was told it was an investment. Marcus said he was starting a legitimate business, and I was helping him get established. By moving marital assets without your husband's knowledge or consent, I didn't think I needed permission. We were separated. You filed 5 months after these transfers began, Mills said, her voice sharp now. Which means these were marital assets, subject to disclosure, subject to division, none of which happened properly. The walls were closing invisibly. I could see it in Rachel's eyes, the exact moment she realized this wasn't going according to their plan at all. Patricia stood with the kind of calm that comes from knowing you're holding all the winning cards. Your Honor, we'd like to call Sophia Martinez to the stand. The courtroom doors opened and Sophia walked in purposefully. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, no jewelry except small earrings. She looked exactly like what she was, a working woman who decided truth mattered more than keeping her job. Rachel's eyes went wide with shock. She grabbed Barnes's arm, whispered something urgent. He shook his head, looking confused. They hadn't expected this witness. Sophia was sworn in properly. She sat down, hands folded in her lap, posture straight. Judge Mills gave her an encouraging nod. Miss Martinez, Patricia began, you were employed by the Morrison family for approximately 2 years. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. I was the nanny for Owen and Lily. I also helped with household tasks and scheduling. And when did your employment end? 3 weeks ago. Mrs. Morrison terminated me. Patricia walked closer to the stand. Can you tell the court why she terminated you? Sophia took a breath. She asked me to sign a document, an affidavit. It stated I had witnessed Mr. Morrison drinking booze around the children and behaving erratically. She wanted me to testify to things that never happened. The courtroom stirred noticeably. Rachel's face flushed red. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. And did you sign this document? Patricia asked. No, ma'am. I told her I couldn't lie under oath. That's when she fired me immediately. During your employment, did you ever witness Mr. Morrison drinking around the children or behaving inappropriately? Never. Mr. Morrison was always appropriate with the children, always on time, always prepared. He brought Lily her favorite snacks. He helped Owen with homework. He was a good father. Patricia nodded. Did you witness interactions between Mrs. Morrison and Marcus Webb that concerned you? Yes, many times. Can you describe those interactions? Sophia's hands tightened slightly. They would talk about Mr. Morrison like he wasn't a person, like he was just an obstacle to remove. I heard them planning what to say in court, what lies to tell. Barnes stood. Objection, hearsay. Not if she has recordings, Patricia said calmly. She turned to Sophia. Miss Martinez, did you make any recordings during your employment? Yes, Ohio is a one-party consent state. I was the consenting party. Patricia handed a thumb drive to the clerk. We have 6 audio files, all time-stamped and documented. Your Honor, we'd like to play the first one. Judge Mills nodded approval. The courtroom speakers crackled to life. Rachel's voice came through, clear and unmistakable. Just move the money before he can track it. Daniel doesn't pay attention to the accounts anyway. Marcus's voice followed. Even if he does, what's he going to do? Show up to court and cry? The judge will eat him alive. Rachel again. We need to make him look unstable. Sophia, if we need you to write something, just something vague about his behavior, would you do that? Click. The recording ended. The silence in that courtroom was absolutely deafening. Rachel sat frozen, her face the color of ash. Marcus stared straight ahead, like maybe if he didn't move, nobody would notice him. Patricia let the moment breathe naturally. Miss Martinez, is that an accurate recording of a conversation you witnessed? Yes, ma'am. Were there other conversations like this? 5 more, all on the drive. Judge Mills leaned forward. Miss Martinez, did either party ever instruct you to provide false testimony under oath? Sophia looked directly at Rachel. Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Morrison did. Multiple times? Barnes stood so fast his chair squeaked against the floor. Your Honor, we need to address a conflict of interest. My representation of both Mrs. Morrison and Mr. Webb has become untenable given the nature of the evidence presented. Marcus turned to stare at him. What are you saying? I'm saying you need your own lawyer immediately. Barnes's voice had lost all its earlier confidence. As of this moment, I'm severing representation with you, Mr. Webb. You can't do that, Marcus said, his voice rising. We had an agreement. That agreement didn't include potential criminal conspiracy. Barnes looked at Rachel. Mrs. Morrison, I strongly recommend you consider your position carefully before proceeding. Rachel stood up in the gallery, her voice cracking. You're abandoning us now? I'm protecting myself from being complicit in fraud, Barnes said flatly. Marcus shot to his feet. This is insane. Those recordings are taken out of context. Rachel, tell them. It's not what it sounds like. Rachel turned on him, her composure completely shattered. Not what it sounds like? You told me the LLC was legitimate. You said moving the money was smart planning. You said Daniel would never find out. You wanted to do it, Marcus fired back. Don't act like I forced you. You signed every check. You knew exactly what was happening. I trusted you, Rachel's voice echoed off the courtroom walls. You said you'd handled situations like this before. You said you knew how courts worked. I did handle it. You're the one who kept the nanny around too long. You're the one who got sloppy. Judge Mills' gavel came down hard enough to make everyone jump. Both of you sit down and be quiet, or I'll have you removed from my courtroom. They sat, but the damage was complete. The unified front had collapsed into rubble. Patricia remained standing. Your Honor, given Mr. Webb's admission that he's handled situations like this before, we'd like to submit evidence of a prior complaint filed against him in Indiana, a domestic situation involving financial manipulation that was settled quietly, but remains on record. Mr. Webb has a pattern. Mrs. Morrison is simply his latest sufferer, though in this case, she was a willing participant. Mills reviewed the document, her expression hardening with each line she read. Mr. Webb, you're going to need counsel immediately. I'm issuing a restraining order effective today. You are not to contact Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Morrison, or either of the Morrison children until this matter is resolved. Marcus opened his mouth to protest. Don't. Mills cut him off. I'm also referring this entire matter to the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. They'll decide whether charges are warranted. She turned to Rachel. Mrs. Morrison, you have until Friday to produce complete financial records. All accounts, all transfers, all communication with Mr. Webb regarding money. If you fail to comply, I'll hold you in contempt. Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face. Not the performance tears from earlier. Real ones. The kind that come when you realize you've destroyed everything and there's no going back. Patricia sat down beside me. One more witness, she whispered. Then we bring it home. Dr. Sarah Brennan entered the courtroom carrying a thick binder and the kind of calm that comes from dealing with broken families for 30 years. Court-appointed psychologist, recommended by Patricia, approved by Judge Mills without hesitation. Your Honor, Dr. Brennan began, settling into the witness stand. I've completed comprehensive evaluations of both children. 7 sessions total over 4 weeks. 2 at school, 2 at the father's residence, 3 at the mother's residence. She opened her binder. At Mr. Morrison's home, both children exhibited secure attachment behaviors. Owen was open about his feelings. Lily played freely and expressed comfort. The environment was consistent, predictable, safe. Judge Mills leaned forward. And at Mrs. Morrison's residence? Both children showed anxiety markers. Lily had difficulty sleeping. Owen mentioned feeling responsible for his mother's emotional state. Both children reported that Mr. Webb made them uncomfortable. Rachel's shoulders hunched forward. Barnes sat beside her, taking notes but saying nothing. Owen disclosed to me that Mr. Webb had grabbed his arm hard enough to leave bruises. He was afraid to tell anyone because he thought it would cause more conflict. Dr. Brennan's voice remained clinical, but her eyes showed compassion. Lily told me that her mother said if she talked too much about home, her daddy might not be allowed to see her anymore. My chest tightened. My little girl had been carrying that fear alone. In your professional opinion, Judge Mills asked, where do these children feel most secure? With their father, unequivocally. Mr. Morrison provides emotional stability, consistent routines, and appropriate boundaries. The children trust him. They don't trust the environment Mrs. Morrison has created. Rachel wiped her eyes. Real tears now, not performance. Dr. Brennan continued, I'm recommending primary custody with Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison should have supervised visitation until she can demonstrate a stable, safe environment free from Mr. Webb's influence. Judge Mills reviewed the written evaluation in silence. Then she picked up her pen and began writing. The sound of it scratching across paper was the only noise in the courtroom. Custody arrangement is revised, Mills said finally. Primary physical custody is awarded to Daniel Morrison, effective immediately. Rachel Morrison will have supervised visitation every other weekend, pending review in 3 months. Mr. Webb is not to be present during any visitation period. She looked directly at Rachel. You put your children in harm's way. You prioritized your relationship with a con man over their safety. That ends today. Rachel nodded, unable to speak. Mills turned to me. Mr. Morrison, your children will be released to you today. The court will provide documentation for their school and medical providers. I stood. Thank you, Your Honor. Patricia touched my arm gently. We'd won. Not just custody, truth. Outside the courthouse, the October air felt different, cleaner somehow. The sky was that deep blue you only get in fall, and the leaves were starting to turn beautiful colors. Marcus Webb had already left with a police escort. Judge Mills had made it crystal clear he wasn't welcome within 500 feet of any Morrison family member. The criminal referral meant he'd have much bigger problems soon enough. Rachel stood on the courthouse steps alone. Her sister had left, her friends had vanished. Barnes was already in his car, probably grateful to be done with the whole mess. She saw me walking toward my truck and called out, "Daniel, wait!" I stopped, turned. Patricia had left to file paperwork, so it was just us. Just the two people who'd once promised forever to each other. "I'm sorry," Rachel said. Her voice was small, broken. "I destroyed everything. I know that now." "You did," I said simply. No anger in it, just fact. "Marcus convinced me that you were the problem, that I deserved better. He made it all sound so reasonable." She looked down at her hands. "I believed him because I wanted to." "You made choices, Rachel. Own them." "I know." She looked up, mascara streaking her face. "Are you going to keep the kids from me forever?" "No. They need their mother, but they need the real version, not whatever you became with Marcus." I adjusted my briefcase. "You want to rebuild that relationship? Prove you can put them first. Actually first, not just in words." She nodded. "Can I call them tonight just to say goodnight?" "Supervised calls for now through the court application. Follow the rules and maybe we can work towards something better." "Thank you," she whispered. I walked to my truck without looking back. Owen and Lily were waiting at Patricia's office, probably nervous about what came next. I needed to get to them, tell them everything would be okay now. My phone buzzed. Text from Patricia. "The prosecutor's office just called. They're moving forward with charges against Webb. Fraud, attempted witness tampering, attack. He's looking at real time." Good. Some people needed to face consequences. 10 months later, Owen made honor roll. Lily started sleeping through the night again without nightmares. Rachel completed parenting classes and started regular therapy. We'd moved to supervised but flexible visitation. She was trying, actually genuinely trying. The manufacturing plant promoted me to operations director. The raise meant I could finally fix that leaking faucet in the duplex, or maybe just move somewhere better for the kids. Marcus Webb took a plea deal. 20 months in county jail, full restitution to Rachel and me, permanent restraining order. He'd never touch my family again. One Saturday afternoon, Owen and I were throwing a football in the backyard of our new rental house. Lily was drawing with chalk on the patio. "Dad," Owen said, catching the ball, "you knew all along, didn't you, that you'd win?" "No," I told him honestly. "I knew I had to fight. Winning wasn't guaranteed, but fighting for you and your sister, that was never a question." He nodded, threw the ball back. "I'm glad you did. Me too, buddy. Me too."